Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. I am your host. I am the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So, in order to begin, I will be talking about Christ and Antichrist, duality consciousness, and how the Flying Rainbow Lasagna resolves duality. So, it's appropriate topic for Sunday. Sunday is usually associated with focus on Christ as the understanding of the Christian religion speaks about Christ. But I have been speaking about on this radio broadcast and in other formats, such as Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, which is the recorded set of lessons that I present along with Wednesday night webinars, Non-Religious Christ Consciousness, or the galactic entity that is comprised of the multiple first-person experiences of all conscious experiencers. I want to say of all conscious life. However, some experiencers do not fit into the category of what we would call living, even though they are conscious and they are entities. So I'm just being really impeccable with my language. The idea today is to really give you a good description of how the Flying Rainbow Lasagna has opened the door for a new way of looking at the world and a new structure built in light of that new way of looking at the world. So first, let's talk about duality. This is the idea of one thing versus another thing. And perhaps you are not aware of how strongly influenced you are by the cellular bio-bodysuit that you are wearing right now. I have contrast because I can remember and feel what it was like before I was in this particular bio-bodysuit, and I know what my feelings and my personal agenda is while I'm submerged within this body, and it's really interesting to be able to note how many of my desires and a lot of my viewpoint has been affected by the physical and biological needs of the cellular organic body. Just taking a little drink there. Well, the physical body has two eyes, and this allows humans to achieve binocular vision. It's quite amazing that by having two eyes, the system of perception that resides within the brain and within the neurology is able to weave together an understanding of the third dimensional reality within which one lives. However, the sense of having two eyes has led to a preconception of a dualistic world, and that dualism is also programmed into the human mind, which I've described as a hacked operating system. And it is a socio-cultural expectation of dualism that also resides in the existence of a two-eyed bodysuit. So you can imagine that, let's say, an insect, such as a bee, would have a very different worldview based upon having a compound eye. So now let me describe an insect's eye. It is faceted, so it has what would be akin to many different tiles or like facets on a jewel, and the perception system that resides within the brain of a bee is able to weave together each one of those facets into an understanding of the totality of the third dimension that it is experiencing. Well, first of all, I would like to say that universal Christ consciousness, the galactic entity that I'm really talking about here, is like the compound eye of a bee or a beautiful insect. Each facet of the eye is comprised of your unique individuated viewpoint and life experience, and that is why each person's individual viewpoint must be honored. There's a reason why you are who you are, why you feel and think and react the way you do, and your personality characteristics have a value when seen in the totality, because we are each players in a very varied cast of characters that is multidimensional, and so I'm talking about across time, across many dimensions, and quite complex. So I have just defined terms and stated that the galactic being that is called Christ, or universal Christ consciousness, that is synonymous with awareness. Even the awareness of, let's say, a mineral, like a grain of sand on a beach, has an awareness. It has a vibration and an energy, although, of course, it might be a different type of awareness than that which you are familiar with. So let's say it's a really long wave. Let's say that a being has an awareness that is so long that its lifespan is about 13 billion years. That's like the lifespan of the universe so far. So we, as experiencers of 100 years at a time, if you're lucky, would only be seeing a tiny slice of the life of the being who lives for 13 billion years. And as such, it would be difficult for us to say what that life is like, what that being is like, and to be able to have a conversation with them would be very challenging because of the difference in time scale. In a similar sense, like imagine trying to have a conversation with a fruit fly. Fruit fly's lifespan can be 3 days. Think about that. When you leave unattended fruit in your trash can overnight, and then you open it up to, throw away your coffee grounds in the morning, and all of those fruit flies swarm out, they are the equivalent of 33-year-olds, and they are coming out and they've never seen you or seen the light of day or met a human before. I mean, just to give you a different idea of different perception. So I have likened Christ to just consciousness, the capacity to perceive and be conscious. And now I must describe that there are different ages, and the age is determined by the dreamer of the dream. So each age is associated with the chakra on the body, and we may consider this to be like moving up in the octave scale. And I'm just taking a moment to warm up my piano here, but let's say that we're beginning with C, and that would be analogous to the red chakra. Let me put down my pen and I'll just do a little scale for you. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, red. Okay? So, beginning with the red chakra. This is the first dream. And that person achieved mastery, and then they had a cast of characters that were within their dream. Because it must be understood that when you are the master of the dream, that everyone who is alive is like, quote unquote, a figment of your imagination, or a creation or a construct of your own mind, and represents an aspect of your own inner being. So this red chakra person mastered reality and dreamed of a character within their dream who also woke up, and that person became the master of the orange realm. And ages can last for many thousands of years. And that person eventually dreamed of a character who woke up within their dream and became the master of the yellow realm. And then that person eventually dreamed a character who woke up and became the master of the green realm. That is Buddha, or Siddhartha Gautama. So we have at that point historical context within the amnesiac time span, lifespan memory of humanity in its current sociocultural context. Then Buddha had a dream, and within that dream, one of the cast of characters woke up and became master of the reality of turquoise. And that person had a dream, and in that dream was a cast of characters, and one of those cast of characters woke up and became master of the indigo realm. And that happened in the year 0. It's amazing that we actually date our calendar as beginning at the time when we entered the age of indigo. That coincides with the birth of the avatar for Christ consciousness, who was named Yeshua or Joshua, and who has now become known as Jesus Christ. So we have been living within the age of Christ. We have been living within the age from the year 0 to the year roughly 2000. We have been living within the age of Christ and the dream of that particular dreamer. We are all aspects of Christ consciousness. And when I say this, the universal Christ consciousness became embodied in a physical human format, and of course had to cause cellular, biological, and molecular changes in order to accommodate the change in consciousness energy of the physical envelope. So it became a type of hybridized being of like the earthly flesh and the non-earthly or stellar consciousness. And that avatar, remember I have described before the word avatar, coming from Sanskrit avatar, meaning one who has come across waters. And the waters are the ocean of consciousness. So an avatar is a container for consciousness that has come into this dimension from another place. And Jesus Christ was an avatar for Christ consciousness. There have been other avatars for Christ consciousness, including Krishna, the Hindu deity, Daganawida, who is associated with the Iroquois Native American tradition, and there are many others who never had a book written about them or a song sung about them. They simply had their experience, did what they needed to do energetically. They certainly left their imprint on the Akashic records or the recordings of all emanations that we are experiencing, and then they ascended. So just because it's a no-name or generic brand avatar doesn't mean that it is not valuable. They're all valuable, and they're all facets of the giant compound I. So first I have to make it clear that on the rainbow bridge of going up the chakras from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and up to the next octave, that when you get to indigo, the level of the brow, that is a moment of high vulnerability in raising one's kundalini, because it means that you have activated the third eye chakra and now have access to a great deal of powerful higher faculties, things like telepathy, telekinesis, the power to heal, the power to destroy. It's the power to reach into someone else's mind and perceive. And you can be a bull in a china shop and reach into someone's mind and cause great pain and harm and anguish, or you can reach into someone else's mind and you can redact, you can take away pain, you can heal, you can set one's mind at ease. And oftentimes in people's inner spiritual journey, when they reach the level of the brow, they are misled by their own sense of greatness, and they forget that there's still the journey of one more chakra, the violet chakra, the crown chakra. This is one's divine connection to source. This is located at the top of the head. It's analogous with a baby's fontanelle. That is where the hole in the skull is not yet closed when you are first born. And as you grow more into the consciousness of daily waking consciousness here in this time and place, your fontanelle closes over and connection to source diminishes. And then it becomes necessary to focus in order to connect to source, to really take time to sit down, quiet the mind, be in meditation, and cultivate the connection to source. But really, that chakra is our divine innate connection, and it is our birthright. So although many humans have gotten used to the sense of being disconnected from the violet chakra and cut off from source, that is not the baseline normal that was intended for us by the universe. We were intended to be a complete circuit. Consciousness that is connected to the source, connected to the mundane or the earthly realm of third dimensional reality, and also connected back to the source again as we give our report or send back the experience that we have had in the sensorium. So this is like saying when you are a perfect divine conduit, the sun and higher hyperspace consciousness may live through the instrument of your body, may perceive through your eyes. Now you understand how a galactic being can have a composite viewpoint comprised of each one of our life experiences. So that galactic being is made up of everybody from athletic professional swimmers to beggars in the streets, from dogs that are, like running wild in the streets of Venezuela, to elephants, to blue whales, and, back to the gut bacteria that are inside of your intestine. That each one of us is an antenna for Christ consciousness. And it is also in question, to what degree are you a broadcaster or a receiver? That it is possible to be either a clearer channel or a less clear channel. So you could say, like, from between 0% or 100%, a being might be able to tune in or allow consciousness access to a certain proportion of their being. And so that might be experienced as some moments great clarity, some moments cloudy reception, or sometimes static on the line. And now I'm going to get a little bit into the equal and opposite of Christ consciousness, which is Antichrist. But in order to do so, I just need to take care of a little bit of technology. So one moment here. And I know it is amusing that I have just said I need to take care of technology, and I'm beginning to speak about Antichrist, but we must not be impeccable, must be impeccable in the use of language, and you can't just make a blanket statement of associating all technology with Antichrist. So Christ is true awareness. It is the awareness that we achieve when our third eye is open and when our chakra is activated. And I like to say that your third eye is your library card of the universe. Literally, with your third eye, you can reach out or attenuate or focus one's attention upon. You attenuate with the organ of your mind. It is literally like an elephant's trunk, like a sense organ, that you reach out with that attenuation, with your attention, and whatever you focus on, you can understand, you can perceive, you can ingest in a way. So first of all, as I have been mastering my mind, I have certainly chosen not to attenuate on things that are like dirty, gross, and disgusting. Just like I don't like to smell in physical reality like dirty garbage or like yucky things. Like I'm like, ooh, that smells bad. I'll go away from that. I really do not choose to use my capacity to attenuate to focus on something like serial killers or, the dark side of behavior or anything that are these salacious topics that I notice are entertaining or in some way fascinating to some people. So I certainly will not say that you cannot look at them, but I will say that, like, I choose not to smell poop intentionally. I also choose not to attenuate onto certain topics, onto certain subjects. And certain subjects can also be like an energy drain or a slippery slope. I choose to focus on the topics that are either relevant to my daily navigation or enlightening to my consciousness and increasing my capacity for unconditional love. So I have programmed my Merkaba and I have made my requests to the librarian of the universe, which is the violet chakra. So your library card gives you access to information, but information, in order to really tell a true story, must be presented in the proper order. Facts must be presented in the proper order and context in order for truth to be perceived, because it is possible to tell a lie with facts. And this is what I would say is what Antichrist is. Antichrist literally is translated into anti-consciousness or lack of awareness. If we may say, light is analogous to awareness, because when I turn on the light or when light is present, I am able to perceive. I am able to see, I am able to sense. I can tell that there are things happening or that objects are present. When there is no light present, it is very difficult for me to sense. I cannot tell what's there. I cannot perceive. Darkness or lack of perception is the opposite of consciousness. It is lack of awareness. And most people are comprised of some blending of both levels of awareness and lack of awareness. This is like saying most people are not 100% aware. Most people have a blind side or an area within their perception that they are not able to perceive. So, on your retina, we have this biologically. It is called it is a blind spot where the nerve attaches to the back of the eye, and there's no receptors there. And the amazing thing is that your system of perception and your temporal ego, instead of perceiving like an area of blackness in your visual field, it fills it in with what it expects it would be there. So right now I am looking out my window at a beautiful grove of redwood trees that are bathed in the most spectacular golden brilliant sunlight that's really bringing out these luscious like green colors. And as I'm looking at that, I don't see a big like dark spot where there's no green colors. Like my system of perception fills that in. I'm trying to say, using this analogy, that most people are not aware of their blind spots. These are cultural tendencies, and they're also temporal ego tendencies. Becoming aware of one's blind spots is the capacity for consciousness refinement. It's why we are here. It's why we have experiences. It's why we don't, it's like saying we do not know everything, and we are here learning about everything. And the everything that we need to know about, it's not necessarily something about others or something out there. It's about what's inside of you. And the areas that are not in the light, that are in shadow, they are not necessarily bad or wrong or areas that shouldn't exist. It is possible to have areas of one's being that exist in a state of ignorance, but who are not malintentioned. Simply beings who are in the dark, who have not had access to light and information, and that if you gave them light and information, they would be like people who have just had a meal, like, thank you for the food. I will now, live my life very well. Then we can contrast that with beings who intentionally choose not to ingest light or not to become more aware. Beings who occupy areas of darkness and do not wish to exit those areas, because we're on a journey. We are on a journey of consciousness, and on this journey of consciousness, we are heading, essentially towards greater awareness. But also, it must be understood that there's an equal and opposite. And that just as there is the soul refinement or consciousness refinement towards total awareness, there is the consciousness refinement towards total lack of awareness. Now I'm going to get a little heavy with science, and I hope you can stick with me. And I'm also just going to take care of technology for a moment while I pause this. So here's the science part. Science recognizes that matter has different states. Like we are familiar with the solid state of matter. I'm touching a table right now. It's a good example of something solid. And I have my glass of water next to me right here. This is a good example of something liquid. And I'm breathing air. This is a good example of something that is gaseous. And, if I had a lighter, I would light it and I would say, here is plasma, because fire is plasma, the next state of matter. And then I'm also sitting in a brilliant beam of sunlight right now. And light would be considered the least dense, highest energy form of matter. And I'm using quotation marks when I talk about matter at that point, because it is hardly even matter. Light kind of straddles the fence between something that is matter or something that is pure energy. In the opposite direction of the spectrum, below physical solid matter. There is a state that is even more dense than physical matter. I'm just taking a little drink here. So that state of matter is called a Bose-Einstein condensate. And it is what happens to matter when you bring it down to a very cold temperature. If you bring it down to just a tiny bit above 0 degrees Kelvin, and Kelvin being the scale for absolute zero, and so 0 degrees Kelvin is absolutely zero amount of heat, which would be an indicator of total entropy. Entropy is loss of energy. Heat is one major indicator of energy. And now I'm talking about more science here. We're talking about the age of the cosmos and stars being born. That right now we are still living in the age of the life trajectory of the cosmos, where stars are still being born and are still in development. That means that there are enough raw materials, like big giant floating clouds of gas and dust particles, that can coalesce into nebulae and become stars and achieve the critical mass to sustain the reaction that we know as a star. And at a certain point in the universe, or in our experience here, no new stars will be created. And then it will just be a question of the stars that are already in existence going through their lifespan, because stars have a lifespan, just like you as a human. You are conceived of, you gestate, you're born, you age, and you die. Well, this also happens to a star. A star begins as a nebula which coalesces. It becomes a star that goes into different stages of energy release, and eventually it is not able to sustain the balanced reaction of both sending out energy and not being crushed by its own huge, immense gravity, and it collapses in on itself and becomes a black hole, becomes a vortex into infinity, becomes the singularity. And all of the energy that it once contained is, sent into another realm. Just like upon one's own demise, all of the energy and consciousness that you were goes into another realm, goes on its consciousness journey. So at a certain point, all of the stars that are in existence will have gone on their consciousness journey. They will all have finished their life trajectory and gone into the singularity, like made a vortex, a black hole into the singularity. And this realm will be a dark realm, like Swiss cheesed reality, and the holes are holes that are black holes, and all of the energy that once was here will be sucked out, and there will be nothing. Well, let's say there will be no energy. And if there is any matter left, it will be like a dead husk of matter. When matter gets down to this almost 0 degrees Kelvin, the action that is in the subatomic realm, usually everything is bouncing into each other and, flying hither, thither, and yon. Everything gets slowed down. So now, instead of having discrete particles or discrete atoms, all of the atoms begin to work as if they are in unity, as if they are one atom. When you take away all of the energy that exists, you achieve unity consciousness. Just like when you get to the place where all energy exists, you also achieve unity consciousness. This is the concept behind the flying rainbow lasagna. That there's been a lot of judgment for the past 2,000 years. The idea that there's Christ and there's awareness and there's light and there's Antichrist, and that these two have been struggling in opposition, and a lot of the discomfort and dis-ease of the planet and of the social and cultural matrix, or the grids of understanding the behavior system, cultural values, why people act the way they do. A lot of that has been so out of balance because of duality. With the flying rainbow lasagna, this is the way to break free of the bonds of cultural conditioning that keep you struggling against. Even people who are interested in progressive ideals and the New Age movement, associated with the light workers and with the light side, are often still mired in duality, the us versus them paradigm, when it must be understood that all consciousness is an emanation of the primary divine ray of consciousness, and that we are all individual, like photons on our journey, and that some beings have gone through more levels of refinement than others. This is how we can understand people who are still stuck in the "I'm going to kill you to get what I want" phase. It's like, that's like, oh, you're still pooping your pants. You haven't achieved toilet training yet. Like, you get to stay at that baby level, but I'm going to be up here in kindergarten because I learned that that's not effective. And that's what really happens when we achieve unconditional love. This is like achieving the self-control necessary to enter into human society. When you're a little tiny infant, you're allowed to piss and poop and stick your finger up your nose. But when you're 4 years old, you're not supposed to do that anymore. And you're supposed to start acting properly as preparation for experiencing interactions with other humans and being able to achieve the behavior that is expected, and eventually being an adult. This is the same thing with entering into galactic society. In order to enter galactic society, you cannot be, quote unquote, pissing and pooping and sticking your finger up your nose. That would be like having an uncontrolled mind and being filled with things like judgment or hatred, disapproval. Judgment is a big one because a lot of it is about finger pointing and blame, and you're not as good as me, or you're not the way you're supposed to be. And the sword that cuts the Gordian knot is unity consciousness, understanding that we are all shards of the same consciousness. And how can I explain the past 2,000 years? This has been consciousness mired in duality and not able to break through to the source. And people who have had an experience of increased power through activating their third eye have often misinterpreted both what they see through their third eye and what is considered appropriate behavior for someone who achieves extra powers, like extrasensory powers. The idea is really true that with greater power comes greater responsibility. So it's like, if you have to become unconditionally loving. That's like achieving mastery and self-control so that you're not angry and judgmental and manifesting, or acting out of the wrong motivations. And then we begin to be able to send energy into the third eye. But, it's really crucial. What do you choose to look at? Like, do you choose to look at all of the worst about humanity, or all of the worst if you were looking at the life book of someone? Or do you have a balanced perspective and you see the totality of what a person is? And you get an accurate view when you connect to source. So I am trying to say here that the past 2,000 years have been human culture with the third eye partially activated, but not yet connected to source. So there are amazing things that start to happen when one activates one's third eye. Beyond the capacity to ingest sunlight directly and connect directly to solar consciousness, we're talking about the capacity to heal and to regenerate, like to stay young for a very long time. But you can understand how people might get drawn off track in their process of their total enlightenment by seeking the shiny trinkets of, quote unquote, superpowers that one can achieve when you begin to open your third eye. So I'm talking here now, I'm alluding to people throughout, history who have gotten magical powers, but sometimes they haven't used it in a way with integrity. And when I say integrity, I mean matching one's heart, because the heart knows what is right and wrong. This is not judgment. This is not like my personal judgment, this is not judgment of the current social and cultural conditioning that says this is what we believe is right and this is what we believe is wrong. This is your heart, an innate arbiter or a scale with which to weigh each action and each thought, and becoming prepared for the school of the universe. Like when I say, in order to get into kindergarten, you must be able to achieve unconditional love so that you have that balance, so that you have that neutral structure with which to approach information that can be incendiary. So like one example of incendiary information is lesson 18 for Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is what I'm doing with the weekly webinar right now, and it's about galactic history and some of the negative thought entities that have been oppressing humanity for a very long time. When we achieve unconditional love and we look at the journey of the negative thought entities, first of all, we understand where they came from, what created them, why they're acting the way they are, and what they're motivated by. And then instead of the idea of monstrous, I want to say subhumans, but I think the word monster does it. The idea of just frightening monster type beings, that we understand that these are beings who were once divine sparks of consciousness, whom have been horribly distorted by some of the choices that they have made. And each person gets to make the choices they want on their life's journey. And if you want to choose, negative behavior, that is totally fine. And then you also get to take the consequences. So the negative thought entities that have chosen the shadows, where they're like, we are happy living in the interstices, and we like to feed off of human misery, and we like to farm humanity for pain, and we don't want to change, those beings are part of the I would say, conspiracy against awareness. And those beings have conspired to prevent individual humans or human culture as a whole from becoming more aware. So when we look around and we see aspects of culture or environmental degradation that reduce human awareness, it must be understood that that is not originating from the humans themselves, that is originating from those who would wish to oppress humanity and keep humanity away from true awareness. Well, things are really changing now because I said each age has a dreamer, and we have just exited the age of Pisces, otherwise known as the Piscean age, and we are entering into the age of Aquarius. Yes, we could sing that song about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and also understand that in cosmic time, entering an age and exiting an age is not exactly like walking through a doorway. It's not necessarily something that takes 1 second. It is something that can take hundreds of years. But to understand that we have exited the representative mindset of the age of Pisces. And that mindset, first of all, is one of duality, and it is one of seeking an external authority figure. Think about this as a necessary stage of development, like when one is a tiny little child, and you say, Mama, Dad, Jesus, Obama, somebody tell me what to do. It's like you're looking for outer guidance, and perhaps that is appropriate at a certain point in one's development. But like a young person or an adolescent, at a certain point, you begin to think for yourself, and you no longer take total direction from mom and dad. In fact, for most people, the rebellion begins, like at age 2 or 3, when it's like, no, I refuse to do bedtime. No, I refuse to eat my vegetables. No, I refuse to, put on my socks or tie my shoes at this point. Or sometimes it's, I refuse to go to school, or I refuse to get up and get to the school bus on time. That, humans find a way to assert their individuality from the authority structure and begin their bid for freedom. And that is an appropriate and desirable personality characteristic, because otherwise we would all remain in a passive infantile state of constantly being like, tell me what to do. Like, I'm nothing. Tell me what to do. It is very important to achieve the levels of maturation where we begin to initiate action on our own, where we achieve our own personal agenda. Like a little tiny child is like, something? I want a cookie. I'm going to get up and see if I can find a way to get into the cookie jar. And this is like what we begin to do with consciousness, where we say, you know something? I want to activate my third eye. I want to know more about the format of energy in the universe. I want to understand the way that energy flows in the universe better so that I can be more empowered. This is like understanding, like, when you're a little tiny child in the physical realm, the more you understand language, the more you are empowered. The more you understand complex social structures, like familial structures, who's in charge, authority structures, the more you're empowered. The more you understand economy and money, the more you are empowered. And believe me, little kids understand economy very quickly. It's that meme that I have seen on Facebook recently, wanted it, asked grandma for it, got it. Like, little tiny kids know who to play. And this goes back to like mammalian training, like little tiny cute baby foxes or cute baby tigers who know how to make eyes at the right person so that they will get fed. Like, this is a mammalian survival technique. But I digress a little tiny bit. Hold on one moment. Redirecting back to unity consciousness and the flying rainbow lasagna. We were in the age of Pisces, the age of the external authority figure. We have switched into the age of Aquarius, which is now the age of one's own innate connection to divinity. It is the era of the violet chakra. We have finally made it to connection to the source. It is like coming back home after a very long, wearying journey, and having been very depleted, you finally get totally to drink your fill and to rest and to be totally filled up and reinvigorated and just nourished in the most wonderful way. That is what this era is all about. We are literally coming out of one of the darkest eras, and I would say of dense energy. And when I'm describing energy, I'm talking about the energy of consciousness, the dense consciousness of emotions such as hatred or motivations that are built on personal greed, that quality of energy and that vibration. That's the culture. Like, we are coming out of literally a barbaric culture. That means, barbaric means only the strong survive, and to the victor go the spoils. Except in this culture, the strong is not necessarily determined by muscle mass. One does not have to resemble Arnold Schwarzenegger in order to survive in this culture. It is determined by economic muscles, by how much money you have. So in this culture, the person with the most money shall survive, and only to the victor go the spoils. So if I'm stronger than you, I have more money than you, I can buy out your company, I can rout you and take your resources. How about this? I have more money than you, I can lobby and buy people in Congress and get the structure of society set up in my favor. That's just par for the course. That's just the way that things are set up here. The Gordian knot, let's cut the Gordian knot. That is the myth of this knot that is untangleable, and the way that you get through it, duality, is to understand unity consciousness. So there are beings who are still laboring under the delusion that there is a limited amount of resources. They are in that experience because of their personal, they've made choices that have really structured their personal reality to reflect that they don't have enough. And I'm talking about supernatural beings who have affected life on Earth, that supernatural beings don't have enough because they have turned away from the source, and they are experiencing life without light and without awareness. Imagine that. Imagine what it's like to live in the dark and not ever have any new ideas. It's a realm of almost total negativity and filled with negative emotions. There aren't emotions there like love or kindness or empathy, and the only way that people have anything is from stealing from one another. This is the realm of these beings, and they have really negatively impacted humanity and stolen a lot from humanity. Well, guess what? Flying Rainbow Lasagna is what's what. The genetic degradation that brings people away from source in early childhood. The genetic degradation is an implant. First of all, it was a targeted genetic manipulation by, non-terrestrial, non-human beings to change humanity. And that has happened several times throughout human history. And in this case, one of the most recent times, it degraded the human connection to source. And what that meant was that humans were no longer telepathic and could no longer regenerate their cells. And there became the invention of disease. And there also became the invention of unintentional death. Yes, death used to be intentional. Can you imagine that? That people were able to regenerate their bodies and live in a state of total health and vitality until the time that they chose to leave their bodysuits by simply stopping their heart and stopping their breath and going elsewhere. That is what death used to be. And I'm talking now about what would be considered the time of Atlantis, or, the antediluvian, the pre-amnesia high society that, existed before the present darkness. And when I talk about denser states, this dense era has existed really for didactic purposes. People have really learned a lot from their experiences, built a lot of inner spiritual muscles, and been prepared for the next level of consciousness. And that's the whole point. Like when you get up to the level of activating your third eye, I'll use Milarepa as an example. So this is a Indian mystic and saint. And early in his career, he had a lot of, inner telepathic powers, and his third eye was very active, and he used it for violence, and he used it in order to kill people. And then later, he felt great shame and regret at having acted in that way, and spent a lot of his time trying to make amends and trying to make up for it. And then eventually, achieved peace and achieved release from the things that had been holding him back. So the whole point being that those life experiences were necessary for Milarepa. He got powers, he used them poorly, learned life lessons, and then eventually transcended and found out, what true love and what true connection was all about. And for some people, that is a necessary trajectory. And it seems that that is what has been happening on the with surface Earth culture, that the culture has had to go far astray, that really the purported values of the Christian church do not match, that let us say this, the evidenced behavior of the Christian church do not match the purported values of the Christian church. And there is a great deal of cognitive dissonance associated with those two things. The religion itself has twisted and distorted what Christ consciousness was here to share with humanity. And also, so really I will tell you that the Christian religion as it currently stands is really the religion of Antichrist. It is the religion of anti-awareness. It is designed to take people away from the healthy functioning of their third eye and the activation of their pineal gland. So, for example, the vibration of guilt. This is a vibration that is not in alignment with unconditional love and the accessing the higher faculties. Guilt is one of the heavier, denser emotions, and a lot of the teachings of the church are programs about guilt and shame and a sense of sinfulness or having done something wrong. All of those things basically take a person's power away, take you away from the inner power that we use in order to activate our higher faculties. The same thing with creating a sense of shame around sexuality and the first chakra, the area of the genitals on the body, that the Christian church has created a sense of shame about that body part, and feeling pleasure, which is what you feel when that chakra is activated. So the teachings of the church say, do not activate that chakra. If you do, you are a bad person. It's like saying, do not put money in the bank. If you do, you are a bad person. So the teachings of the church want you to be energetically poor. They want to keep you away from energy that is available to you when you are healthy and connected to divine source that you may then use to activate your own chakra, to activate your third eye and really become a master of your own reality. So, okay, we are now in the age of Aquarius, where we no longer have to seek external authority figures who allow us to get into heaven, or who, absolve us of something that we need, or that we worship through the intercession of something else. This is about understanding that each one of us is a spark of the divine presence and has a divine innate connection, like a cell phone or a Wi-Fi hotspot to God inside of your own brain, and that cannot be compromised or taken away from you. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna, let's say that's the data plan for the cell phone inside of your brain that talks to God. For a long time, humanity had degraded genetic code. This was intentional. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna patches your code and makes it so that you can reconnect with higher consciousness and with the source, and return to, first of all, the states of physical vitality that one gets from connecting to the source. Also, the sense of having new ideas, that when one connects to the source, it is a way that you can get new innovations, new approaches to problems. This is where solutions come from. If we use Fukushima as one very heart-rending example, this is a slow-motion ecological disaster that is unfolding like train wreck out of control, and I think that humanity does not yet recognize the severity of the situation or how long-lasting the consequences are. There are ways to stop the problem and ways to clean up the radiation that has currently contaminated the environment. However, in order to do so, it is necessary to connect to the ideas, to connect to the innovations, to use creative thinking and problem solving in order to rectify the situations that are out of balance on the surface of Earth right now. So I'm trying to say that the capacity to connect to the source and to higher consciousness is the way to get out of the cage. It gives you, it's like saying, oh, I never knew if I just unscrewed this one screw over here that the whole cage would fall apart. This is how humanity is going to really set itself free. Each individual achieves freedom on their own, and human culture as a totality becomes free really by creating a planetary noosphere. This is connecting all minds that are on the planet and within the planet or connected to the planet, and creating a totality viewpoint. In the same way that the compound eye of a beautiful bee gives the totality viewpoint, that the planetary structure, we can have that viewpoint of what's the grass telling us, what are the trees telling us, what are the clouds telling us, what is the ocean sensing, what are the ice caps sensing, and how is that relating to animal life, and how is that relating to bacterial life. It's like becoming aware of the information that has been part of the symphony of life around us. Like humans have been the tone-deaf musicians in the symphony of life around us. And of course, as humans are awakened and begin to see the light, humans have to make choices. GM, genetically modified organisms, genetically engineered food, these organisms are totally tone-deaf, sour notes in the ecosystem of the planet. And they have certainly not been created or okayed by the planetary intelligence, and they are terrible ideas that come from, unearthly beings that do not have the planet's best interest at heart, and they are tools and substances for the oppression of consciousness as opposed to the raising of awareness. So it hopefully is helpful to you now to look at the duality as awareness and light and information and energy, or the absence of information, light, and energy, and to understand that there can be a spectrum of consciousness. You can be 100% aware, you can be 50% aware, you can be 25% aware, You can be 1% aware. And this really helps in being able to perceive and understand that most beings are a blending of the energies of both awareness and lack of awareness, and that the whole reason why we are here on our journey is to move into greater states of awareness. But the non-judgment happens if you see someone going towards entropy, like if you see someone engaged in substance abuse and self-destruction, and their life is literally spiraling down the toilet. You cannot judge that person, because they might be heading towards the end of the spectrum that is the Bose-Einstein condensate. They might be heading towards the timelines of total darkness, total blackness, total loss of energy, because at that total dark end of the spectrum, one also achieves infinity or unity consciousness. So both total energy and total entropy are aspects of unity consciousness, and our journey as a collective, all consciousness, is heading in those directions. And that also all consciousness is part of this universal or galactic Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is not for people of a particular religion, and it is not only for humans or humanoids. It is not only for animals. It is also for plants. It is for planets. It is for star systems. Christ consciousness literally is all-inclusive and based upon unconditional love. And that this is part of like how we can answer some of those age-old questions. How come good and evil exist? If good exists and God is good, then how come blah blah is happening in the world? How come the Holocaust happened? How come so-and-so died of cancer? How come, so-and-so's dog got hit by a car? And we now begin to understand it's because around here there is an interplay of particles, and some of the particles are highly aware and some of the particles are not aware. And the particles that are not aware often have entities acting through their blind spots that wish to achieve and maintain lack of awareness in the world. And that's the conspiracy. That's what people perceive when they talk about the Illuminati, or when they talk about, negative, lower vibrational service to self-thought entities, the beings that occupy the interstices. These beings are out for their own self-preservation. They don't know how to eat pure love. They can't incarnate fully into the material realm, and they are stuck until or unless they are sent back to the great galactic central sun for reprocessing. And the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is pretty much the bridge that allows consciousness to get to where it needs to go. I know this is a very big topic, and I'm very happy to continue next week on the Flying Rainbow Lasagna as an interdimensional bridge of consciousness, and really ending the war of duality through the Flying Rainbow Lasagna concept. Thank you so much. Please tune in next week, Birth of a New Dimension.